This is a picture of my hometown, Tacoma, Washington. Sunrise is coming up. You can see the mountain on the far side. It's about a 5,000-meter mountain that I often go to. I want to start by giving you a little visual about where I come from. But before I begin my remarks, I want to talk about the people whose shoulders I stand on. My mother, Natalie Leith, on the far side. Her father, Robert Elliott Leith, my grandfather. His father, Lewis Leith III, my great-grandfather. His father, Lewis Sonny Leith, my great-great-great-grandfather. His father, Lewis Leith I, my great-great-great-grandfather. His mother, Lavinia Leith, my great-great-great-great-grandmother. And his mother, or her mother, Caroline Leith, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. Caroline Leith was the first person in my family to be freed during the American slavery period. And these are the shoulders I stand on. And these are the people who gave me the opportunity to be here with you this evening. Now, I'm going to talk about love, as I was introduced. It's a big topic. But through my aspirations and through my thoughts about love, I'm going to talk specifically about my mother, Natalie Leith. You see, my mom was an extraordinary person. She was very loving, but also very tough. She demanded much, but she cared even more. Here we go. All right. She was a very fastidious person and a very hard worker. I learned a great deal from my mom. And most of all, I learned bits and pieces on how to grow up and be a good-thinking man, but she also taught me this about love too. Excuse me, it's going the wrong way. She also taught me about love too. So as a young man growing up, I always had these notions about what was love really about? And how did love manifest itself? How did I know if I was in love or not? But I learned through my trials and tribulations and through my life that many times in love, there is no choice. And I learned through my thoughts about what is love, I came to this mathematical equation that care taken to action equals love. A good friend of mine, we were always talking about what was love. And after about 5 or 6 or 7 years, we came to this point. And we thought, that's what love is. It's when we have care, but it becomes an action. That is a demonstration of love. Now, love is active, not passive. Love is action, not words. And love is being in the game and not standing on the sidelines. Okay. Now, my thoughts about love were deepened. Let me go back. My thoughts about love were deepened 9 years ago. And 9 years ago, I received a late phone call from my mom. It was one of those phone calls where you know there's a big problem going on. My mom called me, and she said she'd fallen. She said, "Mark, I can't get up." She said that she was feeling very weak. And so I changed my clothes quickly, and I jumped in my car, and I drove as quickly as I could to her house. I got to her house within minutes. I had a key to her house already, so I unlocked the front door. I ran through my mom's house, and I ran to her bedroom, and I found her there in her bedroom, laying on her back. She was laying between her bathroom and her bedroom. And when I checked her to make sure everything was okay, nothing was broken, thank God. And I could tell that my mother was very, very weak, and she had no strength. Now, I asked her, could she stand? She said, no, she could not. I asked her, could she lift herself? She said, no, she could not. And then a series of events occurred in that brief moment. I thought this is going to be very difficult because over the many years, my mom had put on quite a bit of weight. And it wasn't her weight that I was concerned with. It was the fact that I knew I was going to be lifting her, and she had no ability to even help me. That was my concern, and that was a difficulty. But suddenly, as I was thinking about lifting her, I had this deepening notion about what love is. And this clairvoyant moment came to me, this clairvoyant moment of wisdom came to me in a learned epiphany. And this is what a searing thought came out of this moment. And it said, Mark, you have no choice. You're going to lift your mother, you're going to pick her up, and you're going to place her on her bed. So I looked at my mom. Her eyes were looking a little sad, like not knowing what was going on. And I walked up to my mom's shoulders, and then I squatted down as far as I could go to the ground, sumo style, and I put my arms all the way under my mom's body. I planted my feet as deeply as I could to the ground, and I stood up. I lifted my mom up off the ground, placed her on her bed, then I called 911 for the ambulance to come. I learned something in that moment about love. And she did feel quite light, as my words suggest behind me. I thought she was going to be very heavy. But lifting her with my spirit and my soul, my mother felt light like a feather. And in that moment, it was a very clairvoyant moment, as I said. A moment of wisdom. A moment learned through an epiphany. And in that moment, this came to me. And it said, Mark, in love, there is no choice. So I want to ask you, audience, how many of you have ever been in love? Raise your hand if you've ever been in love. Raise your hands up high. I want to see. Don't be shy. Raise your hand. A lot of lovers in the house. That's good. That's good. Thank you. Hands down. Okay. So my travels through love that stay with me today are through what I have learned from my mom and other ways as well. But I've learned this notion that in love, there is no choice. We must go forward. We must have the action. We must have the do. We must have the win. And we must have the accomplishment in love. Because in love, there is no choice. Now, there was a second situation that happened to me 5 years ago. And it was about these things, cheesecake and sweet potato pie. Now, I love to bake. And my colleagues and students, hopefully in the near future, you'll have a chance to try some of my baking. But one thing that was very strange is that my mother was an excellent baker of sweet potato and cheesecake. And for some reason, my relationship with my mom's baking was such that I thought, I don't want to try to bake her cheesecake or her sweet potato pie, because somehow I might sully her name, right? So I never tried it. But I would come home from university, and my mom would bake a cheesecake or a sweet potato pie, and before I left back to school, she would give me a whole pie or a whole sweet potato pie or a whole cheesecake. And that was one way of showing her love. And I would take that back and eat it. Now, my mom's cooking was so good, I would say it was better than any Michelin 5-star chef. There was no restaurant anywhere in the world that could cook her cheesecake better or her sweet potato pie. And that all changed one day when I decided 5 years ago to make her cheesecake. I opened my computer and I pulled out the recipe that she had given me, and I gathered all the ingredients, and I took out my big mixing bowl, and I had my big wooden spoon. I did not have an automatic mixer, so I knew I'd have to mix that by myself. But before I started making anything, I called my mom. And we talked and we texted for 3 hours in making that cheesecake. Go back, go back, go back. We talked in text for 3 hours in making that cheesecake. And when everything was finished, I put that cheesecake in the oven, let it cook for 60 minutes. After it finished cooking, I let it cool for 2 hours. And after it cooled down, then I opened the oven and I took a quick peek inside. Oh my goodness. You should have seen what I saw. That's what I saw. It was amazing. And that's the actual picture of that day. The smell, delicious smell from that cheesecake filled my home. It was amazing. It was just like my mom's. The next day, I took my family to brunch. And on the way back, I got a call from my sister. And it was one of those calls where you know there's a big problem. My sister called me. She told me my mom had just passed. I was in shock. I was saddened. I didn't know what to think. I was thinking, how can my mom just pass away? We talked all night long making that cheesecake. What happened? And then I thought about it. The timing that my sister told me when she passed away and what was going on. And I realized that up to the minute when I finished that cheesecake and it had cooled and I had opened the oven to peek inside, that's when my mom passed away. You see, one more time, my mom was leading and loving me. She went through the whole recipe with me. Like I said, talking on the phone and texting. Loving and leading the whole way. Her love for me was active, not passive. It was action, not talk. She was in the game, not on the sidelines. So I knew I had one more loving thing to do for my mother, to take care of her after she passed away. I called my 3 sisters. We planned the funeral. We planned the memorial. We took care of her body. I went to the funeral home, found a beautiful place where we could put her to rest, which happened to be 33 steps away from her first grandson who had passed earlier. Got her urn to be placed at the cemetery. And all these things I was doing because in love there's the action, there's the do, there's the win, and there's the accomplishment. And through these two stories from my mom, I learned that the most important thing about love is, in love, there is no choice. Thank you.